All right, so everyone talks about your Naples, Sarasota, St. Pete's, Miami, etc. of the world when speaking about the Sunshine State. And I think they are all really unique and have a lot going for them on their own outright. That is, I don't think a lot of people are doubting that. But there is a whole nother tier of coastline that, in my opinion, people either completely skip over or maybe never even heard of. So in today's video, I want to highlight 4 potentially forgotten and or underrated spots within the state of Florida that maybe you should consider, whether that's relocation, investment, or you just want your dollars to go a little further without completely sacrificing the lifestyle. We're going to look at where they're located, what they're like, the prices, and even what other towns that you may have heard of that you can contrast them against. I really hope you enjoy my take. If we have not met, my name is Adam Hancock. If I can assist you, me and my team, with any and all of your real estate needs, please consider reaching out. Without further ado, let's hop in. All right, number 1 on my list, I'm gonna go with Englewood / Manasota Key, Florida. So this will give us a Southwest Gulf Coast option and what I believe to be an interesting alternative to the Naples, Venice, Siesta Key, and onward corridor. Locationally, this is a Sarasota conversation. You're basically more or less the southernmost tip of this Sarasota general area, which technically puts you in Sarasota and Charlotte counties as a combination. But in layman's terms, you're below Sarasota, which innately puts you below Tampa Bay. You're above Fort Myers, which also puts you above the Naples area. So it's an in-betweener town. Skinny barrier island, so you have the Gulf on one side and Lemon Bay on the other side. You cross further inland, then you hit the river, and you also hit Charlotte Harbor. So a lot of beach access, a lot of dockable feasibility on single family homes, and a much more old Florida lifestyle, probably now and forever, because I think geography and commercialization will somewhat determine what a town will ever be. But this is an area that people lean into for the intentionality of exactly that in comparison to the other more tourist popular towns. Now, a couple things that stand out. No high rises, no resorts. You're gonna see cottages, bungalows, things like that, small scale condominiums, etc. Beach access is plentiful. Parking lots aren't gonna be as insane, people and fee laden as some other areas. Walkable restaurants, there's bars, there's live music. It's not St. Pete Beach, but I think there's enough to make it interesting. It's not completely desolate. And then, of course, boating, paddleboarding, kayaking are abundant. Some world-class fishing too, a tarpon and stuff right below you. So all in all, interesting. To add a little bit more value, if we compare against like a Naples, Siesta Key, some more popular known names, this is gonna be quieter and it's gonna be less polished. But again, this isn't a place that people randomly go into. For the most part, definitely cost comes into play, but a lot of people choose it for those reasons. And on the cost thing, it's gonna be more approachable. You're gonna see stuff near canals for $700,000-800K versus 1.2 million. You're gonna see older condominiums for $300,000 to $400,000. So a lot of the reason that people sneak into these areas, it switches from a number 1 or 2 priority. It's either price first and then the other, or it is the laid back thing and then the price, but typically they're never unrelated to each other in the same conversation. In an area like Englewood, short-term rentals aren't impossible. It's house by house. So if you're looking at doing an investment, that's something to look at. And then, you know, of course, because you're on the Gulf, you have flood zones and things like that, insurance that you need to look at that we're going to talk about in future videos as well. But I would say it would be one to look out for. And also with the emergence of like downtown Welland Park and Venice Island right above you, you have more beaches, more variety and things that you could get to today in 2025 that I couldn't have said the same 5-6 years ago about in 15 to 18 minutes. So it would make an area like this a lot more doable than years past. All right, on to number 2, and now we are heading to the northern Atlantic coast of Florida to a place called Flagler Beach, which I think offers a really cool alternative to areas like your St. Augustine, Ormond Beach, even parts of the Space Coast. You are gonna sit basically just north of Daytona and just south of St. Augustine. So those are gonna be your 2 bookends. And because of that, you're gonna avoid basically the tourism traffic of both because people are shooting left and right and you're sitting in the middle. Small beach town, a lot of local pride, almost zero commercialization and overdevelopment. And to boot, you're gonna be just over like an hour, 15-ish minutes, depending on when you're driving, to both Jacksonville and Orlando for all the big city jollies. All right, a couple things I find compelling about our number 2 option. One is the oceanfront is zoned for low rise only. So you're gonna see a lot more water, then you're gonna see walls of condominiums in front of you. 2, the beach is very walkable. The pier is central to that beach. And the restaurants here are gonna be much more on the mom and pop side versus large chain stuff. And then 3, this is one of the rare places in Florida that you kind of have an old surfer town vibe that is not that common beyond like this area, maybe the Panhandle in 2025, especially on the Southwest Gulf Coast. If we kind of juxtapose against the sexy kid on the block, which is St. Augustine in North Florida, this is gonna have a lot less historical polish. Now, St. Augustine, most have less historical polish than that. It's like the longest continuously inhabited city that exists. So you have an interesting interesting mix of beach and history there, but this is going to give you more breathing room as an alternative. You're also going to not have that large cruise ship crowds. You're not going to have the downtown parking struggles that you're going to in areas that people don't just seek out for relocation homesteads, but for also vacation. And you're likely to spend 20 to 30% less for similar square footage near the water in this area versus creeping too far south or north to the others. So I think all in all, if you're looking for more of a full-time lifestyle coastal town with a strong sense of community, walkable access, intentionality, but still not be so far removed, which is the benefit of the state of Florida's narrowness, to all the other things that make this entire state great, while you can pick one but visit the others, then I do think that Flagler would be really interesting. All right, for number 3 on my list, we are going to head on over to the Florida Panhandle and talk about a pair of towns called Mexico Beach and Port St. Joe. These are basically lesser known counterparts to names you've probably heard of: Destin, the 30A strip of beach towns, Panama City Beach, etc. Of this list, my guess would be maybe this would have the best shot that you've maybe never heard of either one of these areas, because when it comes to the Florida Panhandle, even if you visited, a lot of people never even make it as far south to hit Panama City Beach, let alone consider what's below that. And just to put it in perspective, Port St. Joe sits like 51 miles south of Panama City Beach. Very coastal, very much part of the Panhandle conversation, but that far south, which puts you nearly 150 miles one way to Pensacola, still on the same strip of coast, which gives you almost like this hidden pocket. A couple things that make number 3 unique in my mind. One, the rebuilding phases. So a hurricane a few years ago wiped out a lot of what you would consider Mexico Beach, but on the back of that's come a new construction, modernization, elevation, and a lot more storm resiliency because of the timeline that they were building in. 2, there are a lot fewer people, a lot fewer buildings, and way more coastline per person because of that density. And these towns lean into boating, they lean into scalloping and small town values, I'd say, all in all. So if that sounds like you can take advantage of the sneaky position it puts it in. Now let's compare it, like we've done in the others, to some larger areas around it. 30A, the Hamptons of the state of Florida, and Destin would be 2 very spots that people seek out. Prices are going to be a heck of a lot lower in the Port St. Joe to Mexico Beach strip, especially on the resale side. There is not a meaningful tourism engine, there's not a meaningful nightlife scene, but also you're not going to have short-term rental saturation because of the nature of how people end up here, or the parking headaches and things that are related to these kind of populous areas. You'll find waterfront lots, you'll find new builds, even land like under 100K in some cases. So a lot going for it in that respect. I think this one's ideal for long-term investors, seasonal residents that are seeking the Emerald Coast here, depending on where you're coming from. If you've vacationed in years past here, if you're from like Alabama, you're from Texas, Mississippi, some of these areas that really, Georgia, that seek out the Panhandle, or you just prefer this side versus, I would say it's Panhandle and the rest of Florida for the most part, but you'd like to be in an area that you don't have to be around a larger town. You can take advantage of the cost because of it, and you're potentially even looking to take advantage of appreciation that maybe would come with the idea of 30A dripping down to the south. Number 3 would be a good fit. Okay, last but not least, we are going to head back to the Atlantic coast of Florida one more time. This time we're going to stay central for number 4 and talk about an area called Palm Bay. This is another one that I think often gets overshadowed by bigger names like your Vero Beach, Melbourne Beach, even Cocoa a lot of the times. But for buyers looking for value and future growth, I think it deserves a look, or maybe even a second look if you've already taken a run at the area. Just a little bit more about geography before we move on to what's compelling. This one's very, very close to it. It doesn't just sit below Melbourne, it's like 5 miles below it. 45 minutes-ish above Vero Beach, a little over an hour to your northwest to Orlando, and then to the southwest, you're gonna be able to reach Tampa Bay in a little over 2 hours, Sarasota in a similar time frame, and then you work your way down to West Palm Beach if you stay on your coast, and Fort Lauderdale, Miami below you, just to kind of frame the entire state. All right, so what makes Palm Bay, Florida especially special, for lack of better words? One, it's gonna be one of the absolute most affordable large coastal cities in the entire East Coast part of the state, which is then gonna put it in affordability from a Florida-wide standpoint immediately, because the East Coast is already kind of winning that conversation versus like the Southwest Coast or South Florida or something like that. 2, Indian River Lagoon, if you've never visited that, gives you some wonderful boating access, fishing, scenic views, especially the closer you get to US 1, so that's a nice option. And then 3, job growth for a bunch of kind of random strewn together coastal cities is underratedly steady, because you have anchors in this area that would be aerospace and defense based. Companies like L3, you have SpaceX, you have Northrop, amongst many others that all have a significant presence here. And lastly, compared to like a Vero Beach or a Melbourne Beach, which are going to be the ones that a lot of people are seeking out to at least be the first place they start when looking at the Atlantic coast as an opportunity to relocate, you're going to get similar coastal access, but at a significantly lower cost. It's less boutique, it is less curated, but it's also less competitive. You can find like single family homes here under $350,000, just minutes from the water, which is going to be absolutely unheard of anywhere from like Tampa Bay to the Naples area, in my opinion. So all in all, if you are looking for somewhere that still feels like a neighborhood rather than a lot of these resort style towns, this might be a quiet coastal entry point that maybe you didn't even know existed. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for today's edition of the Florida Relocation Guide. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel if you've not already done so. That's just the best way to see what's coming next. If me and my team can assist you with any of you and your family's real estate needs, please consider reaching out as well. Phone number, you can call, you can text, you can email, contact form on the website, any way that you want to reach us. We would love to see if we would be a good match, regardless of your timeline. Beyond that, we have free relocation guides on the website at the links below. We have a great 30-day email. We send one manifesto style, no frills email at the last business day or the first business day of the following month, the end of the month, the following month. I said that weird. Please consider jumping on that. I think that's one of the better things that we produce because it takes you out of this like evergreen video mode and allows you to go really bite-sized, not only more consumable, but more real-time stuff about new releases, new construction incentives, things like that. We have written word versions of the videos on the website, and we are also, at the description box of this video, should have an audio only version as well, which I wanted to release because that is probably my preferred consumption method as of late, just on the run and stuff like that. But thank you guys so much for consuming my content. Again, my name is Adam Hancock. We'll see you on the next one.